Welcome back, and today we're going to be reviewing the brand new Tactile Knife Co. Rockwall V2. I reviewed the original flipper Rockwall on the channel when these first came out, and I thought it was a really good knife. It had some shortcomings, but I love that we have another US company, and I think they perfected this along the way, just like any new company would. But as a first knife, I think they did a great job. Like I said, they did have some issues, but they rectified them as quick as they possibly could. Now we have a bigger, more refined Rockwall flipper, and I really hope they make it in the thumb-studded version as well, like they did with the evolution of this Rockwall. You can get this in 3 different variations. You have the stonewash frame, stonewash blade. You can get it in slate gray scales with bronze anode hardware and a satin blade, or you can get it murdered out with totally DLC finish on everything. That one's the most enticing. Those usually sell out the fastest and probably my favorite of the group. Even though this is bigger than the original, it's still very pocket friendly, and I would just call it a large EDC knife. At 7.93 inches with a 3.4 inch drop point blade, mine has a nice raw stonewash finish. You have a top swedge that thins out the tip a little bit, and it's going to be great for a piercing task. I don't think it's too dainty to where you're going to have to be super cautious with it. You have some nice functional jimping right there that grips the thumb nicely. It's not overly aggressive. You still have that same narrow profile of the blade. And the blade steel on these is CPM MagnaCut with an HRC of 63 to 64. Excellent, especially for a production knife. And some nice thin blade stock at 0.10 inches with a flat grind that comes down to around 12 to 13 thousandths behind the edge. So this one should be a great slicer. Let's find out. Boy, talk about came slicey. Of course, it's got thin blade stock and it's ground with good geometry. So as long as that edge is sharp, it should be a good slicer. Only thing I hope is that Tactile started lowering their edge bevels. I know my first Rockwall was at like 26 degrees per side, and my second Rockwall was at like 24. And my Maverick was at 25 degrees per side, so all over the place, but just way too thick in my opinion, especially when you got a slicing knife like this. Now we're testing the ergos, and I will say that the nice contouring on these scales feels so good in hand, and the pocket clip, being this is a bigger handle, sits further back, so it doesn't bother me as much as the smaller one did. But it is going to fatigue your wrists and forearms quick because it's a thin scaled knife. But it's just your average EDC knife, so it's not meant for hard use or anything. Right away, as you can see, is popping the sisal rope. The 1/2 inch sisal rope is no issue whatsoever. It's got a good enough edge on it to where it's biting into it and it's doing it rather easily. And you got just the right amount of belly to make these cuts on a flat cutting surface very easy. You got more belly than I tend to like, but that said, anytime I'm doing any cuts on this yellow cutting board, I definitely am happy whenever I have this kind of belly, because the more belly, the better in this type of cutting. So just usually depends on your use cases, but for me, whenever I get a drop point, even a clip point, I prefer that tip to be in line with the center of the scales or lower. That way you still have enough belly to do this, but it makes doing drag cuts and stuff like that very easy. It's just such a much more versatile blade shape, but I can appreciate all of them. I just love sharp bladed objects. It doesn't really matter to me all that much, but the ones I tend to grab the most are the lower tip drop points or clip points. This one so far, yeah, just as I expected. Just like my other Rockwall, it performed great. It feels very similar to that one. You have more cutting edge, but that's about it. But as far as performance goes, almost identical. from what I remember. But you see how high I got to come up to do the drag cut? It's much easier just to use that belly. I mean, unless you really need a detail with that tip, that's what I'm going to do. Nothing gave it any trouble. It blasted through all the dense materials, absolutely no problem, and finished off strong with the denim. So excellent job. Good job, Tactile. Yeah, it really sliced very, very well. And not to mention, you have a very neutral handle. You know, with the smaller one, the pocket clip, I could feel it a lot more, but being that the handle's bigger on this one for my medium-sized hands, I don't feel the pocket clip at all. No matter which grip I hold this in, it's still comfortable. I don't feel the flipper tab in the reverse pull. I mean, I can feel it. I can still do it. If I want to, I can come around it. If I need to choke up a little bit. The reverse gas station knife fight grip is very comfortable because this is rounded over, and you have that flipper acting as a guard. The action on this one is stellar. You have a very minimal flipper tab with some grippy jimping there. It rockets out, riding on cage ceramic bearings, and it's got a nice fall shut action out of the box. Beautiful action. I will say for me, now I have neuropathy, so different textures can kind of freak me out a little bit. The tip of that last jump causes it to be a little pokey for me if I'm doing this, if I'm fidgeting with it. But just opening it and closing it every now and again is fine. You also have a landing pad in the scales right here where they put a chamfer on both sides of the tie, so it's nice and comfortable. Now, the pokey spot isn't terrible. I just notice it. And if I'm doing this for a long period of time, it can start to get uncomfortable. Now, it may not be the same on every knife. I don't know. Just depends on where that jimping lands and how sharp that last little part is. But it definitely rockets out. It's got a well-tuned detent. Not overly strong. Just right to make it fly out whenever it breaks that detent. Now let's close it up. Take a look at the handle area. So this one has that beautiful machining that Tactile Knife Co. is known for from their pins, and offers the perfect amount of traction. And this one, I don't know if you can see that, has a very gentle contour on those scales, and they've done a fantastic job softening this edge right here on both sides. There's no sharp areas where you don't want them to be whatsoever. You have a flush tie back spacer, very nice crisp T8 hardware that is flush with the scales, and then you have their semi-decorative pivot there with that circling machining around it that is flush, and you get it on this side as well. As you can see, you got that flat spot, so the pivot is not going to be free spinning. It is captured. So we have a tip-up deep carry pocket clip. I don't ever like seeing the clips all the way to one side because they can make it be a hot spot. And that's kind of what I saw whenever I was testing the original version, because my hand was landing on this spot of the clip. But like I said earlier, not so with this clip. I do wish there was a flat spot underneath the clip. However, that texture is not super aggressive. I did not notice it when I was pulling in and out. It may eventually become a pocket destroyer, I don't know. And this clip is stainless steel. I do wish they would have went with tie on this one at its price point. And unfortunately, there's no lefty love here. It does sit well in the pocket. It's narrow in this dimension, and you do have a flipper tab sticking out, but it is rounded in this direction. So if you had a phone in there or something, it will rub against that. Not something I'm really ever worried about because I don't always put stuff in my pockets if I don't have to. You have tons of internal milling. Look at all that milling on the show side, and you have some on the lock side, and then all you have is a partial inset stainless steel locking leaf. So they were able to keep the weight down tremendously on this one to 2.71 ounces. That is outstanding. I wish you could feel this, how lightweight this thing is. It's incredibly light. Your balance point is a little back, but like I said, it's so lightweight you don't even notice that in hand. The lockup on my knife is sitting at around 50% or so, maybe 60. It's hard for me to tell. Access to the lock bar, you got a nice chamfer on this side, Does sit up a little bit higher than the show side scale, plus you do have some texture there. I don't find this one to be uncomfortable. I tend to use this portion so I don't feel that, because I never like seeing the textures like that. But so far, when I'm using this portion, it's no problem whatsoever. The lockup on my knife, have no play up or down, none left or right. That's exactly what I want to see. Now time for some quick size comparisons. As you can see, it's in the middle of the Ontario Wrap 1 and 2, and it's a little shorter than the Tactile Knifeco Maverick, and of course it's bigger than the original Tactile Rockwall. And it's also in the middle of the Spyderco PM2 and Power 3. And lastly, it's pretty much identical in length to the Benchmade 940, and it's bigger than the Benchmade Bugout. Now we all know there's no knife that's perfect. What are my nitpicks, complaints? I'm not the biggest flipper fan, but that's my preference, of course. Like I said earlier, that flipper can be a little bit pokey for me. You gotta take that with a grain of salt though, because textures really mess with me sometimes, and that one just happens to be striking a chord. I really hope we see a thumb-studded version of this. I think that would be great. Also, there's no lefty love here, and like I said, I think for the price, for what these go for, I think they should at least given us a bent tie clip instead of a stainless steel clip, as well as put a flat spot underneath the retention spot there, just so it doesn't become a pocket shredder. But like I said, this is a very gentle texture here. I don't see it destroying any pockets really quick. Also, this one came with a 26 degrees per side edge bevel. That is pretty darn thick. I wish they would start to drop that to about at least 20 degrees. That'd be great. That way this thin grind is going to perform a lot better. I sharpened this one up after I got done with the testing, and I dropped it 3 degrees just to make sure I wasn't going to create a huge bevel here. That's what it looks like with a 23 degrees per side edge bevel. So that would be 3 sharpenings pretty much, and you can see I'm already getting right there by the plunge grind, and you can see there's also a kick up right here on that edge. That's something that I'll probably fix after the next sharpening by just knocking that down, and then if I need to, I will cut a small little choil in here. So, you know, they could have brought the plunge grind all the way back so you could have had more sharpening life, but at least you should be able to get 3-4 sharpenings before you have to worry about that. So you don't have to worry about a stop pin because the stop pin is behind the lock face. So what are my final thoughts on the new Tactile Knifeco Rockwall V2? These come in this configuration at $329. It's completely made in Dallas, Texas. I don't know if they make their own screws now or they outsource them, but even if they do, I know they're all made in the US. This is a very well made knife. So in comparison to the original, it's crazy how much they've grown in the short period of time that they have. You have the contouring on this full size one. The weight reduction is insane. I gotta see something real quick. 2.61 ounces for the original. 2.71. So a decent bit bigger and wider, and they managed to keep the weights very similar. That's pretty impressive. If you're looking for a slim, sleek EDC knife with great action, that's going to slice very well, even though it has that 26 degrees per side edge bevel, because of how thin the blade stock is, it was still slicing very well, and how sharp it was. This thing, the action's addictive, and I love how the blade kind of buries into the handle, and of course, I love that milling. Sure, we'll end up seeing, you know, the different milling patterns like they did with the original Rockwall, but please, Tactile, if y'all make this one a thumb stud, which I hope y'all do, make the thumb studs more comfortable. These kill my fingers. So that's gonna wrap up today's video. If you're interested in picking up a new Rockwall V2, I will link it down below in the description. If you have any questions in particular, feel free to ask me down below and I'll do my best to get back with you. I hope every single one of y'all is having a fantastic day today, and remember, keep these blades sharp like my Tactile Rockwall V2. Smile more. Peace. Peace.